Well, hello everyone. For a good evening right here, and like I have right here, I'll talk about for your love internship and basically that talk for best explained ever. And you see right here is I went and put together right here are some is a drawing right here. Worked a little bit in Photoshop. I was not able to use all the images I would put together. Which I know that more likely next week sometime I'll be to see what I can do. And then knowing about for anything based on for what I want to mention about for your president's inauguration. But anyway, but you see right here is that with these drawings right here I want to put together right here of talk about for whenever two kids like children who are what you call visiting, if they are what you call the neighbor's kids or something like that, that whenever they meet up and then they start talking about stuff. One of those could be about for internship. And so if most of us will know as to where that whenever you're going to be about a really young age, between 3 and 4 years old, that you're going to be talking about stuff. And one of those things that you could be talking about, and one of those topics that you could be talking about, will be as to where that the things that you would like to have, or maybe the stuff that you dream about having, one of these days in the near future, and especially on the weekends if you're going to have if you're going to be going to parties or maybe have a sleepover or something like that, you're going to have somebody, there. It's like they're at the house. You are, you'll be able to talk to them and talk to them about that. You like to maybe like to explore this or you explore that or something like that. But talk about right here for like internships, and if anybody warns us that we're doing it, the math and the accountant, I'll talk about for what internships basically are. So that just think about as to where that for like whenever we're going to be 4 years old, that most kids would probably think as to where that whenever they grow up, that maybe they grow up to be more mature enough to understand a little bit more about how important school is compared like if they're going to be in kindergarten. In kindergarten that they want to maybe spend more time with their friends and maybe playing video games or maybe watching TV or something like that. But you see right here, I went and drew a picture right here of me right here if I were 4 years old. And then you have right here is a girl right here. And this right here, yeah, it could be an example right here of a classmate, unlike somebody that you used to know that you grew up with. Unlike maybe you were neighbors at one time with this person or something like that. But talk about for anything that is related to like whenever you were 4 years old. That the things that I know that I mentioned before is to where while we were sleeping, and for anybody that may say that the things that you may have missed the last time that you were checking up on something, or maybe reviewing something, or maybe looking something up on file, you may find a number of things, especially. But I say, if you're going to be spending a lot of time in your bedroom, that things that you to know, be sure about as to where to check and then to thoroughly look through anything that it's like, that whenever you're a kid, that you're going to have friends over, and then it's like a number of things that you could have in your room that maybe that you would they like to play with, such as sharing your toys and maybe watching TV or maybe playing a video game or two or something like that. But number of things that I could probably recall as to what I could remember also, and but mainly talking about for like internship. And if anybody warns us that about love and an internship is that what does that have anything to do with, like say for growing up, as well as anything related to whenever you were 4 years old, and then 4 years old, and then the other image I do want to I was not able to use all of them, but talk about for best explained ever internship, and then you have right here for love. So that's just the thing, though, is that whenever we're young, that it seems like it's easier to talk about it rather than if it's really going to happen. Is toward it, for internships, and basically that for if we were to say that that it's basically paid for. It's services that are provided to you, and then so they say that if it's free or if it's between paid and unpaid benefits, and anything about the specific training related to your schooling and your scholarship. So let's just say that by the time that we start paying our taxes, that we start understanding it more. And sometimes anybody say, what are you going to tell your kids about this is to where the best explained ever, to where that anything about what's called for internships is that first it all comes by is to where that, yeah, that goes by a story that you were reading that you were staying up late at night with this friend of yours, and let's say between 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, you were staying up late with this person, and then you were reading them a story, and then one of the stories could have been based on anything about to where that yeah, anything about the understanding the basic math and calculations as toward it whenever you're in school that you had majors and you had dreams, right? Well, just think about whenever you pay your taxes and whenever you manage your taxes is toward the source of a scholarship and internships. And so that's just a thing whenever if we're going to be in school that some that may say is toward it whenever you graduate, and then they say that, well, whenever you graduate, that sometimes anybody say that, yeah, whenever you're a kid, between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, that you may not remember all this stuff. So anything that you talk to with this person, it could be a boy or a girl, and you say you start talking to them, and then it's like you start talking to them about stuff that you would like to do that you're dreaming about whenever you're a kid. Whenever you're 4 years old, yeah, number of things that you could be talking about, especially reading a story and things that you like and the things that you don't like. And let's just say if you got somebody over that your parents are going to be babysitting, or if it's anything about for daycare, or if it's anything about you talk to them and start asking them a few questions or anything like that, and you're like Warren, to where yeah, whenever you were 4 years old, that do you remember at all getting up early in the morning with them to watch cartoons? And anybody say yeah, you watch TV with them and you start talking about some things, and let's just say that you start working on your homework with them. That yeah, that this girl that they used to know, you were classmates with them at one time back whenever you were about 4 years old, that you knew them maybe from a church activity or something like that. And sometimes it's like, yeah, well, like, and you don't remember, do you? You don't remember having that conversation, or you don't remember, doing this, or you don't remember going to the party and meeting up with about maybe 4 or 5 different friends that around the neighborhood or something like that. So if anybody warns us toward it, yeah, that for how does a meeting start out with, and how does this connection start out with? So let's just say if I was 4 years old, and let's just say that I decided to go ahead and write a letter to a classmate or something. Let's just say if it was yeah, it's somebody that you were friends with. You go over to somebody's house, and then you make friends with, like you start connecting with them. Somebody who's right around your age, they're right around 3.5, 4 years old, and you start talking to them, and then they start talking to you about you know, yeah, that start talking to you about stuff, and let's just say that nearly 20 years later, 25 years later, that there's this internship to where an internship to where a lot of the things that are paid for is to where that students who go to school to get a good education, and things that to learn about is that the stuff that's paid for and then the stuff that's not paid for, and for anything about for free services. So if anyone warns us that yeah, that for what you know about what love is, and if any girls or anybody that may wonder to worry about the guys and the gals, it's like yeah, for what you know about what love is, and really, do you have to be do you have to have a relationship? Do you have to have a partner or so just to prove that yeah, this is me. I'm growing up now, but anyway, but talk about for whenever we're 4 years old, there are a lot of things to think about and a lot of things to talk about, really. But really, that whenever if you're going to be spending time with somebody, it could be a neighbor or it could be a friend of yours or somebody like that. The first thing that you think about is toward it. Yeah, well, let's stay up until about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, watch TV or maybe talk about something. And how many of us are going to have those conversations about, for money paid to you on an allowance or anything about what you call taxes or maybe anything about scholarships or grants or anything like that? How many of us are really going to know what that really is back when we were 4 years old? And then most of us were going to say, yeah, you may have known what points were and you may know what puzzles were, but how many of us are going to know about what internships are? So back when we were 3 or 4 years old, that I guess it basically meant to us is to where that yeah, parents. It's like the parents will probably say is that for anything that there's anything about what's called internships, it basically is known as to where yeah, mommy or daddy will take care of it, or maybe something that's related to where that yeah, that for things that you could be thinking about whenever you're 4 years old, and one of those would be is toward that that anything about your internship, especially, and it's like if you were to work your homework though, and think about it, so yeah, that whenever you were very young that you may remember talking a little bit about as to where you may have thought that as to where if you start making good grades and then you start your parents would treat you out to something special, and one of those would be is toward yeah that they too could take you out shopping or they take you out to an arcade or somewhere like that, but anyway, we're talking about for best explained ever, and with this talk about for growing up, and for you have right here, yeah. For if this was what right here was me right here, if I were to be at 4 years old, and this right here would be a girl right here for 4 years old. So these two children right here would be around the same age, and let's just say that this was back in, from back in 1988. I can go and just say 1988 as an example. So these two children right here, whenever they start school, whenever they start preschool, and then whenever they start kindergarten, and then by the time that they grow up, and then just think about as to a number of things that they may have missed about each other, and a number of questions that they may ask each other also. Besides, Google connections, or if it's going to be so, Google Love, or if it's anything about Yahoo or Google or something like that, staying in touch on Facebook, that you're going to have these two children right here that have me, and along with maybe a lady friend that I used to know, and then she may start talking about us to her. That you remember that? Yeah. Whenever we were little kids, we used to ride our bike up and down, you say the street, and then we used to, hang out. We used to, we used to walk to the park together or do activities together back whenever we were very young. And some that may say is to her, well, I remember a little bit of that, but man, I was just too young. Yeah, Mike, you may not remember everything, but still, that we come up to those moments as to where that you knew them, from back from your hometown, that you can remember doing a few things with this friend of yours, or maybe a few friends of yours that it's like say yeah, that before that they started kindergarten or before that they started preschool, that this is maybe what you and her talked about. This is what you and maybe 3 or 4 neighborhood kids talked about, as to where that whenever that they whenever they get out of school, whenever they graduate, whenever they grow up, this is the things that they want to do. And how many of them are really going to stay as toward it? They're going to go out and get jobs, or they're going to go out and get married, or they're going to go and start a business of their own, or that they want to go and manage their own income. And how many of them are going to say as toward it they want to manage their own income whenever they grow up? And I know with me though is that really that I really wanted to get somewhere with my artwork was one of them that I think I may have mentioned also. But then another thing could have been is toward that you want to see how far you're able to get independently or something. And so you start, this girl right here could also maybe mention about us to her that, something that maybe that she can, we all can remember about us to her that, yeah, that you're that kiddo, who used to show up for class as show and tell with the coloring book or something like that, or that you used to, what you call that, for anybody that say that, yeah, that, if they would have known you since school, that, for how intelligent that you were, showing up for class, and or maybe if it was a neighbor of yours that they start talking to you about something. But talk about for internship though, and so a lot of us will probably say that, yeah, the parents or the children would say that, yeah, that more likely that you would be qualified for that mainly that after you turn 18 years of age. And so a lot of that stuff that they have online is yeah, that besides it's confidential and it's kept secure, and then for anything about online sites from back in 1988, though, that we learned that whenever we were 4 years old, that we were concentrated on and spending time in our bedroom, maybe reading books, and then maybe one to solve a puzzle or two, or maybe staying up late. And how many of us, yeah, have experienced that to where that, back when we were kids, that we want to stay up late? And why is it that we want to do that? And I know I asked that question before, and like with anybody that may warrant toward it, yeah, that the best answer that you may find is toward it, maybe that you just, you can't do it on an everyday basis, so you just think about it toward it, whenever you stay up late at night, you're able to kind of experience about it toward it, more quiet time, yeah, that especially on the weekends. If you're going to have maybe a friend or two over, especially on a sleepover, that or anything such as maybe what you call parties or anything such as events or whichever, that you're going to be playing a game with a few friends of yours, about maybe 4 or 5 friends who are about maybe 3 or 4 years old, maybe 5 years old, whenever you first start preschool, and they always say that, yeah, about how many of them are going to be talking about the internship. Well, maybe not all kids know what that really is. I'm like, really, about how old were you whenever you were first told about the book bag, and maybe about the binder, or maybe about the flashcards, or maybe anything about nowadays with school that they have those you say the erasers, and like any other source of school supply, notebooks and stuff like that, no pens or something like that, but still that about what grade were you whenever you were first introduced to something, and whenever you were first aware of something, and just think about whenever you start preschool, that whenever you start preschool, that the things that they talk to you about, and knowing about about the parents, though, what they would mention to the kids also, that the things that they would need to have also. and and I know that anybody would probably say that anything from the party, or maybe anything around New Year's time, or anything about what you call this college education. Maybe not everybody would remember what all that happened nearly 20 years ago, but still, though, that just kind of think about this, just keeping this in mind, is toward it, that yeah, that if you do wind up meeting somebody in the near future, and then they start talking to you about this, to her, yeah, that I remember you, yeah, we met, we met in the second grade, actually. I know you since the second grade, and that they knew a little bit about you, and then that they start talking a little bit about the things that you and they used to do together with them, and so sometimes it comes to those moments as to where that for anything about what's called for internship, is that whenever we start paying our taxes, that we may understand a little bit more of it whenever we start going to school. And so that's just a thing that back whenever we were 4 years old, that we may have bought a candy bar, or maybe that we would have, what you call is like how much experience had we would have gotten back whenever we were only about maybe 3 or 4 years old. It's like, yeah, you earn points and credits, and maybe that you start talking about, yeah, whenever I grow up, that this is what I want to be, or you start talking about maybe the possible story, the future or something like that. But quite a few kids would maybe say is toward a number of things that they talk about whenever they're young. And some of them that may even mention about is that they want to, what you call that, that they want to get into Toon Disney, or maybe that they want to go ahead and get into book publishing companies, or maybe get into this this stuff about maybe computer stuff, computer works and animation, or that anything about what you call solving puzzles or something like that. And so it's like, anything that you're going to be doing on the weekends, especially with this friend of yours, with a few of your classmates. I'm like your neighbor's kids. If you're going to have a neighbor's kid that's going to come over and visit with you, and then just think about it, about how many of them are going to be aware of this internship. And you're like, one to her, okay, what is an internship necessarily? Well, it's programs that are provided, yeah, that about the cost of have to say the tuitions, and a lot of stuff that we would see, especially in the college years. I don't know too much about this daycare, so I don't really know if that same thing, which I'm thinking it would maybe be paid for by the state. I don't really know too much about the daycare, because if anybody wants us that. Would there be any source of internship cost or anything like that based on our taxes if it's really the daycare? So let's just say that if you would have met this person, this girl, maybe in daycare. I'm like, if you were in daycare for a couple of weeks, maybe because the parents had something to do during the day, and there was like anything about what's called the cost of it. They say for the parents would pay for, but still though, that if you would have met somebody back when they were about 3 or 4, and just think about it, to where now they're all growing up, and then by the time you meet up with them again, maybe after about maybe 27, maybe 30 years or so, and just think about it, to where that, hey, what's been going on? Like, yeah, exactly. Whenever kids grow up, that they're like saying, to where that, oh, I'm sure that there's a lot of things that have been going on with you. Like, yeah, since you moved away from your hometown, and since a lot of things have been going on from over the years, and maybe that somebody say that, yeah, well, that's not really any of it concerning any business or something like that, but still that for anything about us, to where that for what we call between love and romance or anything like that we can also mention about us, to where that for anybody, where I say, whenever you grow up, that you may think as to where that you got cousins, or maybe aunts or uncles, or your brothers and sisters, and maybe friends of yours that they may have already gotten married and had children of their own, and then it maybe start a business of their own or something like that, and they go out and buy cars, and then they go ahead and start, they get jobs, and that pay more money, stuff like that. But then just think about it, to where that kind of puts you in a situation to where, yeah, well, what's taking you so long? When are you going to get your internship started? Like I say, yeah, why don't you start getting involved with the, like getting involved with maybe the Boy Scouts, or maybe the Girl Scout troops, or something like that. So if I say that, yeah, then anything about what's called being grown up. And so, a lot of kids, whenever they're about 3 or 4 years old, that they may not really understand all this stuff about whenever we start paying our taxes. Where does this, all these questions and concerns, where do these possibilities begin necessarily? And it seems like that there's so many of them, to where it's really hard to remember all about how they all began, because it's like, since before you were born, this is what's been going on. But still, that for any kids who grow up, that they may remember a little bit about whenever they were very young, and they may say as toward it, yeah, that they remember somebody that that they were in daycare with them at one time, or they knew him from class at one time, or they you say that, yeah, that they were over at somebody's house, maybe for a birthday party or some sort of event, or maybe for babysitting or something like that, whichever, any other sorts of get together gathering, and they start talking to you, and it's like, yeah, the things that they talked about, especially, one of those would be as to where, yeah, what's your favorite subject? Like, I don't have one at the moment. Or like, yeah, that what are you saving up? What are you saving your money for? Or something like, what's your favorite TV show or something like that? And one of those could be is toward, yeah, that they start talking to you about internships. And it's they say, yeah, that whenever you grow up and by the time that you're 16, 17 years old, and you start paying, you start working a job, and then it's like that there's papers that you may get in the mail, and then maybe anything from your school, and then maybe anything that you talked about. And like with anybody, that if it's going to be between 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, that you may not remember all the stuff that what you talked about back whenever you were about maybe 3 or 4 years old. Yeah, back whenever you were in the fifth grade, that you can remember that the times tables were hard to memorize. And it's like, yeah, you don't remember about what all your grades were necessarily, but still, that if anybody warns us that, yeah, that you want to be like all the other kids, sometimes it didn't work that way either. But still, that what to talk about for internships is, what's the best ways of how to explain to our children about that is toward that back, whenever you were very young, that you didn't quite understand it, and if it really applied to anybody who's younger than the age of 14. But still, whenever you're 4 years old, that maybe you don't have all the discipline, or like, yeah, for anybody being a real young, being very young, is that you want to think about having fun and enjoying the childhood, and watching TV, doing stuff for entertainment, just for fun, stuff like that. And so just think about it toward this internship, though, that a lot of those kids, whenever they grow up, that they may get a little bit more experience with that. But sometimes and anybody say that for what we know about what love is, and it seems like it all goes by is toward it. Whenever you go to a party or any source of event, you may meet somebody who's in that same situation. Like, say, yeah, they may ask us to where you and I are not related at all, but why is it that we have a lot in common? I can, we do. I can, a little bit, because we went to the same schools, and we had the same interest, and plus you and I both had the same particular struggles. You like say you mentioned before as to where, yeah, you like stories. What was your favorite storybook whenever you were about 4 years old, that you had a storybook in mind that you like reading all the time? I'm like, well, besides Green Eggs and Ham, or maybe a few other Dr. Seuss's books, or any other storybooks like that. That I can remember reading a few other storybooks, and I don't remember all the titles to them. I can maybe explain a little bit about how the story began. But do you remember reading a little bit about maybe Stuart Little, or maybe any other source of fictional books, and maybe any other source of children's books, especially? And so it's like that. That's just a thing about, if it's especially about the holidays too. But really, how many books are we going to be reading about that's going to be talking about taxes, about you know science, and history, and really, I'm like, how many of us have read very many what you call these tales? I guess you'd say anything about storybooks based on understanding a little bit more about, for a good education that could get you a good scholarship, a good internship, and as well as for how other kids you'll get to know about each other. And just think about this as toward it. Yeah, that maybe not everybody's going to remember all from what they did nearly 20 years ago. I'm like, back nearly 20 years ago, that you showed this girl right here something incredible, and she asked you about how'd you do that, and you were like, well, I'm not sure. But it's like, yeah, who taught you how to ride a bike? Like, yeah, it's like you just had to have a lot of practice just to learn. And I guess with Valentine's Day coming around the corner too, that if anybody say, yeah, you're going to be talking to somebody that you met, in kindergarten, and they start asking you a little bit about you and your favorite storybook, and just think about it, for when it comes to internships, though, with internships, that basically that that does that mainly mean is toward it after you graduate, and then for anything about what you call, if it's credit hours or if it's anything about your scholarships for whenever you completed it, the full 2 years or so of college, and then whenever you get a good paying job, and then this is how this starts. But still, that if anybody warns is that for anything about what you call between fundraisers, and then between college funds and then student loans, that if there's going to be any source of situation, and if anybody warns is that for how people meet each other, especially. And sometimes it seems like it's toward that the things that you gotta do whenever you were a kid, that you just gotta do what you gotta do, and one of those will be toward something that maybe you don't want to do either. And just think about it as toward that one of those things that maybe you just don't want to do, and like if you miss too many words on the spelling test, then maybe you don't want to have to write it 5 times. But it's like, well, they say you gotta write it 5 times because you missed it again, for the attendance from the spelling test. But anyway, but anything about bookmarks and highlighters or anything like that. But talk about here talk about for the best explained ever. But if we're going to be talking about for any source of internships or scholarships or anything about, say, for growing up, and then you say, that if you're going to be up 4 years old and you're going to want to stay up late night hours and want to talk to your friends or so, and think as to where that don't know exactly about this internship stuff, but back whenever we were kids, that we talked a lot about the things that we want to do back when we were growing up, and just think about as to where but really how many of us are really going to mention about as to where that really that you want to go ahead and start managing stuff independently, or maybe that you want to go ahead and have your own. That how many of us are going to maybe mention about is that you want to go ahead and have your own your own account, or something like that. But still, that just so as to where that is that anything to get you an idea, especially on the television, huh? But anyway, for talk about for best explained ever internship. Thanks for watching, Miami 25, and have a great day.